So his wife Roz used to have to do some inking sometimes when he was pressed for time. It was crazy. And yeah, so whatever level you're on, I would say put it out and see, right? Just don't worry about the money now. Just do the Vanilla Ice thing. You know what Vanilla Ice did?
And we are episode 33. How you doing, Jake? You got some rain up your way?
Yeah, it's like on and off. But how'd you fare?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad, is what they were talking about the deluge. Um,
Right, not as bad as yeah. If you're just listening to this, this was Hurricane Ian that slammed into Fort Myers, I think, and Naples was like ground zero. They're pulling bodies out of there.
yeah, it's been
Um,
tough, man.
Historic 500-year flood for South Carolina, North Carolina, parts of North
It was
Carolina.
apocalyptic.
But we are nice and dry here, and maybe we do need to keep all of our artwork elevated, right? Don't put it in a milk crate in the bottom of the garage.
That's right.
But yeah, no, I got not too much to report this week, other than I was in Ithaca yesterday, where my daughter has college, and I mean, well, she's near Ithaca, and I found this used bookstore, and I wander in, and because they have records, vinyl records, and so I in the basement, and I must have bought like about $90 worth of records, and then just as I was leaving, and my daughter and my wife are waiting for me, they're like, "Come upstairs, come up, we're done, we're leaving." That's when I noticed the guy on the counter was pricing and sorting through these underground comics that he had just gotten in, and he pointed to three long boxes on the floor. He said,
Uh,
"I just got these in," and I'm wondering, does this guy know the value of these things? I look inside, it's like Zap Zero, Zap One, you know,
whoa!
Vaughan, Bode, everything. So I was
Oh,
like, oh my God, so I'm in a pickle here. I have no time to spend because the
oh,
wife is, they're texting me.
she's
I had already
done.
been in, I had already been like, tickling through the vinyl for like an hour. So they're like
Yeah.
done with me and they're like, let's get out of here. And so I say to the guy, I'm like, look, I'm desperate here. I can't come back. I don't know when the next time I'm going to be in Ithaca is. So I grab a handful of stuff. I sort through it, and I was like, just give me a price. And I bought, I think, $70 worth of undergrounds. But if you want to lead with this, let's see what we got.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh,
and so I literally cannot even sort through it. Like I'm just grabbing, I have like 1 second to decide this or that. And the funny thing was like these comic bags were like stuffed so that there were two comics in each bag. So I had
oh.
to pull out the ones that I didn't want. But he charged me 10 for
Oh.
the yeah, he charged me 10 for this. This is Apex Publishing, Zap Zero.
Ooh.
Um, I think there was multiple copies of this, so this is like some killer boxes up there. Um, this one is, yeah, I think these are not safe for work here, but we have this one,
Oh, God, I love his work. Ugh.
and I don't know if there's even a number. This is the collected, so this is the original, folks. And funny thing about
Cheech.
Bon Baudet, he's an icon of the graffiti movement.
Yes.
And this has a $1 marker on it. I don't know if there's anything under there. I'll have to look it up. Really cheap newsprint inside. That's
Hmm.
that's pretty yellow, which means this was an original pressing or an early pressing. This is copyright 1972. And he did a lot with marker. You could even tell these are um I think they're called design markers, or those, remember those little markers that were like really short and stubby with like a
Hmm.
thin cap. and
Hmm.
they were meant for comps and dummies, right?
Yep.
But he used to just use them for his covers. You can see, right, the texture here. It could be smoother. So this is an original Vaughan Bode. I don't know what it's actually worth. I think the guy probably charged me $10 because, I have a small stack here. And yeah, some pen and ink here with some tints. That means he cut this film out in these shapes, or
Zip it
somebody
down.
did. Yep. Um, and all this here. So this is the original, and the interior comics are very text heavy. Um, not as compelling as his covers, but here now it looks like this was done in color, but then printed in black and white, and this is a much more smooth, style with these grayscales. And again, I don't know if the originals are in color here, but Bombade was very, very stylized, very, very interesting, and this was the foundation for the Ralph Bakshi movie that we spoke about, I think 2 weeks ago, called
Yep.
Wizards,
Yep.
where he basically just stole the Cheech Wizard character, made him into like this guy with a fuzzy beard. But um, he's an icon of the graffiti movement because everybody used the lizard character. I don't even see the lizard in this edition, and they put him on the subway trains in the early 70s because he was like the coolest cartoon because it wasn't like a kiddie cartoon, it was like a grown-up cartoon. Moving on. Oh man, I didn't
Oh,
even
hold up,
notice.
hold up, hold up,
Yeah,
hold up.
yeah,
Because like I have like a top 10 in all-time favorite comic stories, worlds, and characters, and Cobalt 60 is probably number 9 or 10 on that list.
now that was started
Um,
by Vaughn Baudet and continued by the son.
yes, yeah,
Okay,
Mark had content, and I had actually was trying to get something going with him while he was doing that,
right.
but then like everything else, in the publishing world back then, it was the publishers were like, because there was rumor, because I had done that Flash animation,
Yeah,
the intro, and so I
great
got it
style.
to Mark.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
a great
got it to
style for Flash.
Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was so freaking perfect. So we were freaking out because he was like, "Oh man, I got people like Liquid Televisions after me. I'm trying to get
Yeah,
this thing going. It was just, oh, it was such a hot time. So I was laying and waiting, and then of course I was, just fantasizing and doing my own, Cheech, excuse me, Cobalt 60 and everything. And once, I mean, as much as probably people would love to know what you and I have done in the past as comic book artists, I would rather tell them about all the goddamn no shows, because that's pretty much more than anything that in the way of publishing.
yeah. What?
But I
Well,
remember that phone call so vividly, and it was just like, "Hey, Kurt," I was like, "God, are you kidding me?" Because back
so
then when things were hot, they were moving, and
mhm.
sometimes they just moved
so
way
was it
too
that
quicker
that
than you.
was it that they passed on it, or that they just wanted
Yeah,
to
I think
exploit
we were at the end of
it?
that liquid television phase because that's what
Well,
he was working with a producer from that, and it was just all these little short animated. And they wanted that Flash animation lengthened because it was only
uh-huh.
like 35 seconds or maybe less than a minute. But he's like, "Could you do another?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I need money because I'm sitting here, you know, trying to make a living at this." And, and our rates at that point were $1,000 a minute. So I was like, well, how many
Yeah.
minutes you want? How many minutes you want? And then it went cold. And then I got the phone call. So,
Well, yeah.
it's a big thing about, trying to get things done when it's property wise. I still would love to see really good, like a 2D with that three-dimensional effect animation, because it's just such a really, really rich world. That's the thing that I was just so attracted to. It was less than, um, detailed in the way of like what I'm doing, like canoodling here and getting
Hmm.
things to come together and tightening up. And but it still resonated. It just the Radio Man and it just. And was it you that that introduced me to his tapes? Were you the one? Do you know about his tapes? Is like it was
No,
kind
that
of like a
wasn't me.
radio show. Okay. So yeah, he had also done a like a streaming. Oh, it might have been Mark that sent me, but he would do these like kind of like stream of conscious radio station show kind of things on tapes and stuff that I think he broadcasted from some pirate radio thing and stuff. But he was just for the '70s underground comics. I think he's an unsung hero.
We're talking about
So
Vaughn now.
yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excuse me. Really unique style, and copied. The Sun really took to the style. So during the Flash animation days, that would have been good because the bold outlines and kind of like the simplicity, but also, the uniqueness.
yeah. And he
Liquid.
died. Von Bo died young, so he had left basically,
Yeah, he took his
mark on
life.
his own,
Yeah, I think his wife found him hanged. Um,
hanging in the closet.
yeah, but Liquid Television, yeah, that was a MTV like sub company that that's all under the umbrella of Viacom. So even if they would have made an offer, it might have not been tasteful to the Bode family because it would have been the same offer, Ren and Stimpy got and Mike Judge got,
Oh,
it
sure,
was
sure.
it was like we own the characters and the merchandising and all that,
Yeah.
and you make the episodes and you get paid, and we put it on TV for you. And it's not a bad deal if you get famous and you get a lot of work and your character gets known, but it is a bad deal on the back end, because Beavis and Butthead right now, made tens of millions for Viacom, and Mike Judge had to walk away. Same thing with Ren and Stimpy. All those characters go on and on, but the creators, they just got paid for hire for their own characters, and that was the deal that they offered me with the Von Ghouls. And because I, took a couple of days to think about it, I lost my opportunity, and so
Yeah.
I do regret that. I probably should have just dumbly said yes and taken the same deal. But by the time I go back, like a week later, Eric Cameron was out as the guy who offered me you know the the development deal. So even if they would have made you an offer, it still could have been a life of misery and like
I just wanted that rate though. I mean, I wanted to hear him say,
yeah.
"Yeah, here, give us 3 minutes." I'd be like, "Great, send me 3 grand."
Yeah, I mean, it
Because
depends where
back
you're
then I
coming
was,
from.
yeah. I mean, we were just always trying to make work. I mean, I was
Looking
like
for the work. Yeah.
24 years old. I wasn't thinking about anything other
No,
than
you didn't own the
keeping the
character
lights
anyway.
on. Yeah, I wasn't. I was just waiting. And like the same thing, most definitely probably happened to Mark and his mom, which was like, yeah, we don't really want to give this away. Can we think about it? And then they
Oh,
called and they
come
were
on.
like, yeah,
Cobalt, you
sure.
could give away. No, Cheech Wizard, you don't give away. Cobalt, give it away. Come on. You're getting on
Yeah,
TV. It's a big shot. It could become big. You don't know. And, you got to take the risk. It's a gamble. But
yeah, it's
this is the problem that so many creators make. How
yeah,
many
yeah,
times have you heard about some artist and a writer? They sit down and they collaborate. This is like after a convention, they go out, have a couple of drinks, and then they have great plans. I say, oh, I have this character. I want to do an outer space thing too, and then they sit down. Yeah, let's do it. And then they say, well, wait a minute. What happens if we get famous? How will we split the money? And they spend more time arguing on how they would split the money if they got famous than they do creating the thing and giving it a chance. And they never get off the ground. And the same thing goes in the music world. And you got to just cross that bridge when it gets there.
Well, I just want to have it on tape right now that you and I have not talked about anything other than sitting down and doing what we're doing. And it's very much in lines with the same thing. We have a great love for it. we have trust for each other, but we also have a realistic expectation about Turbo
Yeah,
Pit Fighter. I mean, you even said at the beginning, you were just like, well, let's just get something going. I have Pit Fighter already, Turbo
pencils. Yeah,
already penciled. I was like, I have, yeah, just said I have digitals. Why don't I just get started? You know what I mean? It just gets rolling.
yeah,
So and then
yeah,
here
and
we are.
right, and in the event that oh, Turbo Pit Fighter is the latest sensation. It's on, it's selling in all the bookstores. Yeah, then we'll fight. It'll be good if we fight.
The
But
feminist movement has her on a flag.
right, and that's funny because just to get ADD distracted here. This
Yeah,
is exactly what this book is about. Stuff said. This whole book, and I didn't know this when I bought it, but this whole book is about the fight between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and who did what, and going through this from year to year. Look, 1953, 1954, 1955. Who did what, and what we have a record of, who said what to who, what things were signed, what letters, because it is a very big deal. By the 1950s, they don't even get out of the 50s, and they're already fighting over the creation of Captain America. And you want to hear something funny? Since we're on this right this second,
yeah,
see this? This little pamphlet was put out by Stan Lee on the orders of Martin
yeah,
Goodman,
yeah.
and it is basically a revisionist history of how Martin Goodman thought up the idea for Captain America,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and he tasked some artists and writers to come up with the character. It doesn't mention
Oh,
Simon and Kirby anywhere, and
oh
Stan
dear.
Lee had to execute this because his uncle, was the one pulling all the strings, and he was firmly on Martin Goodman's side. And then ironically, because the business was so tough after the Comico thing and Dr. Frederick Wertham, is that Jack Kirby had to come crawling back to Marvel, just within a year or two, of all these fallings out. So I haven't even gotten out of the 50s yet in this book, and they are still, they've already, like, hated each other's guts, cursing and, cursing their the ground that they walk on, and then come crawling back to each other. And they needed Jack Kirby, you know, more than Jack Kirby needed them, because Jack Kirby could have always fall back on advertising, and Marvel had one of their best, most productive artists had just died. So yeah, the whole idea of fighting over royalties and fighting over, ownership and everything, it's a good fight to have. It means you have a
Yeah,
successful property,
yeah.
and now it's like, all right, how is this all going to be distributed, right?
Well, I
So,
think,
but
kind of leaning into what we were finishing up last week talking about was the idea of world building. And I'm just saying the idea of it. In other words, it's a very popular thing. It makes this reference is so popular in the way of like canon, which I still don't quite appreciate yet, only because I find it to be used as an argument to basically not allow people to do certain things or take chances. But that's the thing, is that we're dealing with creating a place, a world where, in a escapist entertainment way, inviting people to come and hang out. And when you have something as successful as, let's say, Star Wars, well, it ultimately puts us in a place where, people are, going insane about certain changes of characters and such and such and such and such. So it does become displaced, I think, from the original reason why we're doing what we're doing, is for the love of a medium, and wanting to contribute.
yeah, yeah, we say that
Here's
a
our
lot.
2 cents. Turbo Pit Fighter,
Yeah, we say
post-apocalyptic.
yeah, post-apocalyptic love story. Yeah, we say that a lot. Why we're here and our reasons and everything. But yeah, it's interesting for the public to realize, though, that these characters, these big Marvel characters or DC. Remember Superman was Joe Simon too, the same guy that collaborated with Jack Kirby on Captain America. You know, um, these are things that were just created by people who just wanted work at the time. They just wanted work. They wanted to get through the next paycheck,
Yeah.
and part of that was sitting down and making a character. And there was a lot of characters that didn't click. There was, as soon as Superman came out, there was Wonder Man. No one ever heard of Wonder Man. And I don't mean the later Wonder Man. There was just like a knockoff called Wonder Man. You could find the cover of it online. Um, and so many different superheroes that nobody will ever hear about. It's just a golden age comic, that might be worth some money. So, nobody knew at the time, and it isn't until it clicks, and it isn't until it makes a ton of money, that it's even worth getting lawyers. For Kirby, for years and years and years, he never lawyered up. He was still working for Marvel, and he was grumpy. He took like a $5,000 payout over Captain America. You know, we're talking about a multi-million dollar, if not billion dollar, property, but nobody knew then, and he was just saying, well, I want to get some titles I could work on so that I could pay my mortgage, and Jack Kirby had 3 kids. So, and his wife Roz used to have to do some inking sometimes when he was pressed for time. It was crazy. And yeah, so whatever level you're on, I would say put it out and see, right? Just don't worry about the money now. Just do the Vanilla Ice thing. You know what Vanilla Ice did? He said, I'm going to use Queen's riff, and I'm going to use Rolling Stones riff in my album. And if it becomes a problem, well, we'll worry about it then.
Yep.
And so, it worked. He got on the map, and then of course he had to pay out tons of money, and he was sued, and there was tons of lawsuits, and everyone thought he was an idiot. But at least people know his name. At least the guy made a living, and even if he lost 90% of his money, he made more money than he would have made otherwise.
He has like a pretty decent metal band or like a
Right?
grungy
What's his
kind
name?
of
Van
band.
Winkle or something? Right? I
Yeah,
mean,
something. I mean, he's not a he's
he's
not an idiot anymore, I
he's
would
still
say,
kicking
but
around. Yeah, he's
he
still kicking
is. I
around,
mean,
and
but he's doing it on his own dime, and he's doing it on his own time. He doesn't have to answer to anybody other than the fan base. And I think that's the most important thing is creating something that meets a fan base's expectation. And that's another thing you and I go back and over again is what the hell are people really looking for in comic books? It seems to be this medium that allows people to pontificate. Is that what I want to say? In the way of just,
expound.
yeah, expound. Thank you, that Yankee. And there's very little action and just sort of like nonsense. And even our story has boobies in it. Oh my gosh, we could be in trouble with that.
The booby police.
It's just and it can
They're
also
banning
it
they're
can
banning books
stifle.
all over the U.S. now with the schools.
Yeah, it's just it's such a we've never seemed to push anywhere in comics other than peripheral places where some individual is then picked upon as the antichrist, and then comic books are the plague upon kids. And so since 50, you know what I mean? But we also seem to be the playground where everything comes out. Because I think to go back to what you were saying in the golden age, the golden age of comic book making and Kirby and everybody. Yeah, they were there to get a paycheck, but there was also these guys like Hal Foster, Alex Raymond, who were, doing these syndicated comic book strips, where that's where comic books came from. And with that being said, those guys, have you ever seen any of the studio photographs of Alex Raymond?
No,
Oh, you got to do
no,
it.
sir.
I'll throw something up. One's a really famous one where he just had models, and when I say models, I'm talking about back then hot chicks coming in and just standing on a pedestal, and he's got his pipe in his mouth, and he's just pecking away at the page, um, and making his his comic books. But when you were syndicated back then, you were making mad money because the more papers your story was in, the more cash you were getting.
Yeah,
And so comics was always this redheaded stepchild um, to the syndicate, the syndicated comics.
yeah,
But when Superman hits and Superman gets his radio, or he had a little serial, television serial, like Tarzan and all that stuff, it led into merchandising, where then that cash flow was bound to hit. So Kirby was definitely trying to do what he could to defend whatever ground his art was having for people like um, uh, the Marvel DC, you know.
hmm
So yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's
Jack was mostly just interested in just making comics, and even the characters that did get popular, that he had a hand in, um, he didn't care. And that was a different part of the business side, and I think this is a guy that really just wanted to sit down at his table and create comics, and you know, and
well, it
if
also
that,
seemed like there was nobody coming to his aid. There was no attorney going, well, you know what, I'll do this for pro bono, and I bet you we could come out at
yeah,
the
well,
end
that I'm
with
gonna
it.
I'm
You
gonna
know what
learn
I
all
mean?
about that. It looks like
Yeah,
in the '80s he did get
it's
savvy,
way
and he
too
did,
late.
yeah, but well, he was still alive, right? And
Yeah,
it'll go to his family now. I mean, I think, we don't know what the settlement was, but it was hefty, and he's not only compensated but credited. And yeah, so I guess, those three kids now, however old they are now, they hit the jackpot, and the old man, created a lot of value.
yeah.
So yeah, so
So did you go through? Did you show all your books?
no, and
You got?
that's the funny
Oh,
thing,
okay.
because we're talking about this. There's a couple books I can't show, but we're talking
Oh,
about this era now, right?
oh,
This is the late '60s, early '70s. This is so we saw Zap number zero. I don't know if that
yeah,
came out after Zap number one or before, but this was a time when there was a couple. This is a very thin book. A couple, and look, 60 cents. That's a lot of money. Um, and there was a lot of stuff about sex and lust and race. So this is all copyrighted 1967. This looks like an original pressing. Um, it's got some damage on it, so sucks for me. But like some water stains or whatever. It looks like somebody put a cup of coffee on it. Look at this, these rings. But this was a time when they were really pushing back and really challenging. A lot of all this stuff is available on reprints. You could walk into any Barnes and Noble now and see all these pages reprinted, in these retrospectives and everything. But this was, a really big drug culture, right? Like all this psychedelic comic stuff, and the sexual stuff, commentary on society and political stuff, right? Here's the N word. There's a lot of controversial stuff that people want to cancel Robert Crumb now, for a lot of the stuff that he put out, and
there's always everybody's been trying to
yeah, I
cancel
mean,
him.
some of it was really brutal, but that's what he was doing, right? And that's what all these guys were doing, like Spain Rodriguez and Robert Williams. They were pushing those buttons on purpose because, it's all about notice me,
Well,
and
I'll kind of disagree with you there. I've seen plenty of interviews with him, and I I have taken away, and this is just my own subjective reasoning, is he wanted to see these things and he felt a need and was compelled to create them. At the time, he didn't think it would ever amount or mean anything to anybody. And of course, I think he even at times has felt um, I don't know, shame or a little uneasy. I mean, the documentary on him, the Crumb documentary, I think he mentions an interview he had with a kind of famous newspaper, and um, the gal who was interviewing him said, "Yeah, my brother read all of those books, and he's amounted to nothing but being a, I don't know, pervert or whatever it is." And he's Crumb is squirming around in his clothes, and he's like, "Oh, wow, I'm real sorry." But then at the same time, you could tell he's just like, "I didn't mean to mess up your brother's life, if that's what you're saying my little silly comic books have done."
Right.
But
Yeah, I mean that's ridiculous.
yeah, but
And
that's how people, I think, justify or come to terms with things they A, don't understand, B, don't have any kind of appreciation for, or even want to take a moment and go, okay, well, what's this really all about? First off, fucking comic books.
yeah,
How
I mean
serious are
I
we
remember
supposed to
being
take this?
I remember being very young when I happened upon them because, I was living in New Paltz at a hippie commune, and somebody had them lying around, and we got into them. We were looking through some grown-ups trunks or whatever, and
Mhm.
one of them had it, and I remember going into a room, and I was a little kid. I might have been 5, 6. And and I picked it up because it was a comic, and I was like, "Oh, what are these doing here?" We didn't have any comics, and and then you read it and you see how adult it is, and I was really shocked. I was really, affected. I didn't know what to make of it at the time. I put it in a
Sure.
compartment, and when it came back later on, when I was in, I would say like my 13, 14, 15. I used to go down to Forbidden Planet in the village, and I used to go right into that section because I knew that there was some stuff there, and it was because I wasn't supposed to see it, and I
Yes.
wasn't supposed to do
Yes.
it. That's
Yes.
why I
Yes.
went there, and they would let me just stand there and thumb through them. I guess there was nobody watching the stands at that point. They were more upset that I wasn't going to buy it than they were
Yep.
that I was how old I was.
Yep.
But these things get out all over the country, and Robert Crumb becomes kind of like a lightning rod. Now in 2022, there are some articles. There's this big like feud that Robert Crumb had with a writer. I want to say it was like the Vanity Fair or the Atlantic or something, where he invited him to his house in France, and he interviewed him and Aline Kaminsky, and spent a lot of time there, gave him access, and then the guy went and wrote a hit piece, a total hit piece, calling
Wow.
out Crumb. He's bad. He's a hypocrite. All this stuff. He's profiteering. On smut or whatever it might be. People can go find that, and it was then Crumb responded, and it went back and forth. There's some female columnists that that chimed in and said, some say Crumb is all about honesty. I say, BS. There those articles that are out there, and it is a time capsule. It is a time period, of artistic exploration. Do
Yes.
some people say we went over the line? Yes. Back then they said it, and now they said it. You're never going to make everybody happy, but I think Robert Crumb is a great pen and ink artist. I always had admired his style of art,
Oh yeah.
regardless of whether he was just doing a portrait or
Yep.
whether he was doing like a dirty comic or anything. Um, some of his storylines are some of my favorites, like Fritz the Cat and Mr. Natural. Like we have Mr. Natural right here, one of his most popular characters. This is the guy, you have the Keep on Trucking guy and the Mr. Natural guy, and so Robert Crumb was very important, and I just happened to pick up Zap number one, Zap number two. He was highly involved in the Zap line. This was only one line of comics. They also had Weirdo and all women's comics and Motor City comics, and there's so many. There was one called Hup. Here's Mr. Natural. This was a lot of money in 60s, in the late 60s. This says 1970 on it. I think comics were selling for a quarter, and this is like only like eight, maybe 18 pages, no ads. And they say that Robert Crumb and the people at here, you can see now it's not just Apex Novelties, it's also Last Gasp, or it says San Francisco Comic Book Company, but I think that ended up being Last Gasp, right? There
Well,
was ripoff.
yeah, but I'm sorry that I don't have the specifics, but I vaguely remember that I think it was either the Last Gas guy people or what have you, or in the association. He had his own printer in the living room of his house.
Right, Apex Novelties
They
was
were
just a
printing,
was a
yeah,
print shop. Yeah,
yeah.
Ape,
It was
that's what
just,
Apex was. And
they
and
did the
the
posters and the pamphlets, and it was just like, yeah, we could get. But it's been said that it was like the most horrendous job to print and bind a comic book. So there was a definite passion for it, in its rebellious disseminating of information among the plebs.
Yeah, so Apex, I remember, I think like maybe 20 years ago, Apex was selling out all of the plates, all of the proofs, all of the
Yeah.
um, the color separated, like misprints and everything. They made a lot of money off that. I think they even went to auction houses. Yeah, so this is really controversial stuff, and we know that Last Gasp and Ripoff Press both emanated from this San Francisco milieu. But these are the originals. I don't know how I did, but I think the guy just sold me these for about $10 a piece.
Does he have
These
seven?
Well, no, I have a whole pile here. I might have like 15 comics here, but some of
No.
these, some of these he just priced like at a buck. Like stuff that came out in the
Okay.
90s, that was in there. Here we go. You're gonna love this. Fantagor Press.
Oh,
And
damn.
this is
My
full
God.
color. So this came out, and this has a $2 color cover price on it. This came out in '88.
Hmm.
So Richard Corben was like kind of like the next generation, but this he was an adult comic cartoonist in the sense that he had like light nudity. I mean, it wasn't like
Big
porno.
boobs. Yeah, big boobs.
Right, he had boobs and stuff, and like suggested poses. But um, he was picked up in heavy metal, and he would do covers, and he would do album covers, and record covers. He did Meatloaf's record covers. Um, and this is amazing stuff. Like, and we spoke about him when he died. The musculature and the airbrush effect, and we just still scratching our heads at his process.
Yeah.
You know, and his
No one like
pencils.
him. No one
Yeah,
like him
right.
at
Look
all.
at this. Look at the lighting here. Like this, like So he definitely colored all of his own stuff. It's painted like the Hildebrand brothers, but it's a
Yeah.
sequential comics, which the Hildebrand brothers never did anything like this, right? And you can get into these stories and all that. So that's one story. I don't know what these characters are called. This is the conclusion, Children of Fire, and I love this like short hair. I wonder if this was patterned after Penelope Houston from the Avengers, the first punk rock singer, the first female fronted punk band from San Francisco that had that exact haircut. But moving on, um, I also bought Snarf comics with Corben here on the cover, and this
Mm.
was a two for one. These were together. I think this is like more of an anthology, yeah, and it was just put out by Kitchen Sink. So hopefully I didn't pay too much for this. This is these are these alt comics. Doug Allen, he does Steven. Um, and a lot of these guys are featured in Raw comics by Art Spiegelman. But this is considered the underground movement of the next couple of decades. Here you can see they're referencing Mr. Natural and Crumb and everything. But this is copyrighted in 1989, so this is much later. Really good condition. $2. I got two issues of Snarf. They have some. interviews here. Harvey Pekar on Superman, Sturgeon on Jesus. I don't even know who Sturgeon is. Um, yeah, this is Cruz, who I met once. But these are like two pagers. This is just like a real short anthology story. So I just grabbed this because like I was literally running. Here's some Harvey Pekar stuff where he hires people to do his art.
Who did
What
that?
Superman?
Who did that?
The art by Gary Dunn, story by Harvey Pekar, with a cameo appearance by Robert Crumb. And this is him expounding on Superman. You could see that Crumb drew this one panel here, but it was only a three-pager. So here, Kitchen Sink, which is Dennis Kitchen, was soliciting like three-page submissions from all different um, cartoonists of the time. This is again 1989. So I hope I didn't pay too much for that. Next, I have this other Cheech Wizard. I want to bring attention to his bubble letters, right? This might have been what attracted the graffiti guys. This was a big deal. In 1973, the landscape was changing in New York City really rapidly, and all the graffiti artists are putting these bubble letters all over the subways and handball courts and buildings and stuff. And they really, really were influenced by Vaughan Bode. Here's the lizard character. They called him the Cheech Wizard, even though it was a lizard, because that was just the vernacular. And this is very nice, stylized. I love the way the um, word balloons are all above the panels, right, not blocking the panels. So it looks
Yeah,
like he was repurposing a strip,
yeah,
right, for the comic, and then he just kind of
yeah.
moved stuff out of the way. And then he's got this other thing that's going, reading down. So this is one whole series, which you read this way, right? Like a flip strip, right? And so this is one story going this way and another story this way. This is all content that he was making probably for National Lampoon or something like that. And it ended up being in a different format. So he just puts it in here. But look at this. This is a blank piece of paper. When have you ever seen anything like that? Like he didn't even put like, on sale, next month, Um, and here it is a little bit colored. Here's a picture of the artist, Bode. So I don't know what I paid for this, probably $10, but this is a classic seminal underground cartoon comic that influenced
Genius,
New York City graffiti,
genius,
went worldwide.
genius.
So let's
It's
get back.
amazing. It's still. I just. I really can't understand or fathom why he's not had as time in the light when it comes to comics. I
Well,
don't
he
get it.
died and he
All
was
the
gone.
no,
If
yeah,
he was
let's
alive
see what
doing
he's got.
conventions, he would be, of course.
Nah, nah. I'm talking about like the whole like every channel I watch comic book wise that are talking about comics and
Yeah,
how comics came from here and Kirby and Crumb and they're all never bring him up. Never
yeah.
bring him up.
Well,
Never bring him
his
up.
art is cartoony. It's not
Oh,
it's not like realistic. It's not
well,
superhero-y.
that's all it seems to be. That's all that's being produced by American comic book artists right now is cartoons. That's all it is. It's not
Well, yeah,
even.
but they're getting replaced by manga, and it's like if you're going to be cartoony, and non-representational, then well, that's just the way the kids are going. So just to finish out here, I bought this one. This had a bag on it, and I saw the name Vigil, and I was like, oh no, that means the brothers in
Tony,
there, Joe
Tim,
Vigil. But
yeah.
I said, but maybe Tim's in here. So I took a shot on it, and turns out, yeah, this is North Star Comics. So it turns out it's Tim Vigil is involved in the script only. It says a story. Oh no, art. Joe Vigil and Tim Vigil. Actually, I'm wrong. So Tim Vigil is involved in the art here. But yeah, and this might be it right here. This could be Tim, but some of this art
Hmm.
here doesn't look like. Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe Tim did the look. This is Joe, but this could be Tim. So I don't know if this is an early effort here. This is 1992.
Could be a
Um,
startup. when they were putting Rebel Studios together. I would guess at that
So
point.
this is before Rebel. This is Night Star. I mean North Star.
Oh, it's not
Uh,
Rebel Studio?
it says yeah, and copyright RPAD Publishing, permission of Mort Castle. But yeah, I mean I'm not loving the art. I see, but yeah, this is Tim. This is Tim. This is Tim. But I think they might have been combining, right? Because this
Passing
is
pages.
poorly laid out, composition wise, a lot of wasted space. All this composition wise. I think maybe Tim did the finishing and Joe, I don't know how they were working on this stuff. But what you can see, like whenever things are out of anatomy, out of proportion, it's probably Joe. The layout here, just blank, empty space, not being used right. Not very inspiring compositions or storytelling. Here you see just like, like massive violence, but it doesn't have the splash of Tim solo. So, whatever this is, I don't know. I just grabbed this. Look at this. Oh, this is like really
It's
serious stuff.
great.
This is
It's
like
great.
gore laden. And
I think even on their worst day, they're worth 90% more than what's going on out there now. I mean, they're just
well, yeah,
who's really putting this amount of time
see some
into
I see some N-word here. So this one says art by Mark Nelson. So this is somebody else completely here in the backup feature.
yeah.
Not bad art, not bad art, but
No,
this looks
I
like
dig it.
some Nazi racist stuff going on here. Um, North
Gotta have
Star,
that.
look, they were sharing ads with Comico
Oh
here.
wow. Yeah,
Eh,
elementals.
yeah, and then here you can see some Tim. Oh no, this says Joe.
No, yeah, it's Joe. That's
Oh
it.
boy. Okay. So just when I think it's Tim,
Tim
it's
might have been
Joe.
finishing some of that stuff. I don't
Yeah, and then here they're doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre from North
know.
Star, Tim Vigil, which this seems like they got the rights to or the
Mm,
permission.
yeah.
Um yeah, so interesting. This was an interesting piece. And then last but not least, and I feel I gotta go back up there like quick because that guy's gonna realize like what the prices are. I
If he
bought
hasn't already.
yeah, I bought this. And you can tell that this is like trying so hard to be Jack Kirby. Um,
It's
you know,
decent. I think it's very decent.
yeah, the guy's name is Bob Gould, written, drawn, and inked. Now, I don't that name doesn't ring a bell. This is Boston Comic Works, 1973. So this isn't like what you might think, like, oh, years later after the fact. No, this is right when Jack Kirby is putting his stuff out contemporarily,
Hmm.
and somebody is just copying his style at the time and
It
doing a
could have been in a
pretty,
fanzine.
yeah, I
Could
mean,
have
he's
been in a
doing a pretty good
fanzine and they
job
collected
here,
together. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
right?
What's it called again? I'm gonna try to get a copy of that.
New
What's it
Legends,
read? New Legends, Bob Gould.
yeah, and the issue number is volume one, number one. So I don't know if there was ever a follow up or anything, but
Okay.
I'm just looking how many pages this goes for. Um, right, and it's just, nice looking. I don't think there's much of a story here, and that's it, 8 pages. So very Kirby inspired, and you can see this was at the time. This guy should have gotten some work with some company and just say, yeah, let's do Kirby style, and then pair him up with an artist and give the guy a paycheck, and then he could have done it all day. He's
Yeah.
probably a waiter or probably some office worker at an insurance company or something.
Right. All right. Well,
Um,
we're at the 45-minute mark. Well, actually, a little bit
oh
after.
really?
So,
Okay, yeah,
hmm
just finishing up here. So these are some undergrounds that we got, and that was my haul. Here's
it's
some other
awesome.
stuff just to finish up. Yeah, this is like
It's got me going. I'm
a
charged
lot.
up.
Eric Kimball, yeah, some good black and white interplay. This is the kind of stuff that
Well, I'm
people.
definitely getting a copy of that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll throw you my copy here, but I definitely wanted to go over that. And with that, I am done with page number 9. Finally, I think this is just needs a couple
Woohoo!
finishing bits here, but I can move on next episode, and we're going to complete the battle where our character Turbo is going to wipe out the rest of this motorcycle gang, and uh, they're going to put the fire out in the van. She's only got like maybe four more of these guys to take out by hand to hand. And yeah, that's where I am here. We've gone over this in previous episodes, but I admittedly went very slow today because I was so proud of my underground comic purchases.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, very inspiring. I'm just going to say next episode we're going to make a stab at world building because we have, and I'm going to tease you. I have two names for the baddie big family as suggestions, at least starting points. We still have to talk about Duke, the mystery of that, and the unbeknownst one. So we have a lot of like elements that are still outstanding in our world that
Yes, which we
we're going to talk about next episode.
totally
Yeah,
neglected today. So if you're
yeah,
looking
but
for
you
that,
got a good haul. You got a good haul.
if you're listening to this in like 2030 and the Turbo comics are like on your lap and you want to know how we made them and how we came out, just hit the next button. But if you're interested in hearing about, how important the underground comic movement was in the 60s and 70s, then this was the episode.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
guys.
we're awesome. All right, Jake. Well, I will see you in our next video, which is going to be issue number 8. It's a breakout video of Jack
Oh,
Kirby's
Commander.
Commandy that
Yeah.
we're reviewing. All
Yeah.
right. So,
Yep. Tune in, folks.
all
Later.
right. See you later. Thank you. Bye.